Hi all my dear students, how are you all doing? I hope you are all doing fine. Welcome to Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes and I am your educator Amit Ajmani, and in this class we'll be taking up a new chapter, that is atoms and molecules. We already know a bit of the base of atoms and molecules. We just need to relate a few further details regarding the same. We all know that it was an Indian philosopher, Maharishi Kannad, who was the first person to propose that matter or padarth is made up of very small particles, and he named them Parmanu. After that, John Dalton called these particles by the name of atoms. Atom means indivisible, something which cannot be further divided. And we all know that all matter is made up of the small particles called atoms and molecules. There are different kinds of atoms and molecules which have different properties, due to which we can see different kinds of matter which all together show different properties from each other. Now, what exactly will be the properties of matter? It will depend upon the properties of atoms and molecules from which that particular matter is made up of. Now, when these atoms and molecules combine to form matter, there are certain laws which we need to relate. The first law of chemical combination is the law of conservation of mass. This law was given by Lavoisier in 1774. Lavoisier is also known as father of chemistry. Now, according to this law of conservation of mass, matter can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. What does it mean? It means that in a chemical reaction, the total mass of products is always equal to the total mass of reactants. There is no change in mass during a chemical reaction. Now at present we know that there is a slight change in this law of conservation of mass, that even mass can also get destroyed in a chemical reaction. Einstein mass energy relationship gave the same, but we are not going to go into that much detail right now. So this is law of conservation of mass. The second law that we need to know is law of constant proportion. This is quite important. It was given by Proust in 1779. This law of constant proportion is also known as law of definite proportions or law of constant composition. According to this law of constant proportion, a chemical compound always consists of the same elements combined together in the same proportion by mass. What exactly it means? It means that whatever be the source from which a substance is obtained, or whatever is the method by which a substance is prepared, a pure chemical compound is always made up of the same elements which have combined together in the same mass percentage. Right? This is law of constant proportion. Now let us come to Dalton's atomic theory. We know that John Dalton was the first who proposed his atomic theory, and the theory that all matter is made up of very tiny indivisible particles or atoms is called the atomic theory of matter. Dalton gave this atomic theory of matter in 1808, and he gave various postulates, various assumptions of this atomic theory of matter. Now, what are the various postulates? Let us try to relate one by one. John Dalton said in his theory that all the matter is made up of very small particles called atoms. He said that atoms cannot be divided. These atoms can neither be created nor destroyed. Atoms are of various kinds, and there are as many kinds of atoms as are the elements. Now, all the atoms of any particular given element are identical in every respect. Every respect means they will have the same mass, they will have the same size, they will show the same chemical properties. And if the atoms are of different elements, then they will differ in mass, size, and chemical properties. The chemical combination between two or more elements. It consists in the joining together of atoms of these elements which combine together to form molecules or compounds. The number and kind of atoms in a given compound is always fixed. He also said that during any chemical combination, the atoms of different elements, they will combine in small whole numbers to form compounds. They cannot combine together in fractions. And his last postulate stated that atoms of the same elements can combine in more than one ratio to form more than one compound. So these are the various postulates as given by Dalton. Clear? After the technological advancement and further studies, we found a lot many things in lot many detail, and we know that there were certain things which Dalton's atomic theory said, but they were wrong. What were these things? These are known as the drawbacks or the anomalies of Dalton's atomic theory. The first major drawback of Dalton's atomic theory of matter is that he thought that atoms are indivisible, which are not. Today we know that atoms are further made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Second important drawback was Dalton's atomic theory says that all the atoms of an element have exactly the same mass. But now we know that atoms of the same element can have slightly different masses, and such forms are called isotopes. Isotopes are the atoms of the same element having same atomic number but different atomic masses. The third drawback of Dalton's atomic theory is that Dalton's atomic theory said that atoms of different elements will have different masses. But today we know that even atoms of different elements can have the same mass, which are isobars, right? Which have the same atomic mass but different atomic number. So these were the various drawbacks of Dalton's atomic theory. Now talking about the atoms, atoms are the building blocks of all the matter around us, as we know. And to define atoms, what we say is atom is the smallest particle of an element that can take part in a chemical reaction. If we just complete our definition till here, that atom is the smallest particle of an element, this is wrong. We need to add that this is the smallest particle of an element that can take part in a chemical reaction, right? Now, in order to differentiate between the atoms of various elements, it was John Dalton who first tried to give the symbols in order to represent the elements in a short way. Now, these symbols for an element given by Dalton represented the element as well as one atom of that element. Let us see what were the symbols that Dalton proposed. For hydrogen, he gave the symbol of a circle with a dot in between. For carbon, he just gave the symbol of a circle all filled up. Oxygen was a circle once again blank. Phosphorus, this symbol, sulfur having a plus sign, platinum circle with P inside, iron circle with I inside, copper circle with C inside, silver circle with S inside, gold circle with G having some dots, lead L, and Mercury without anything, just the dots in between. Now, he on his part tried his best, but the problem was that the symbols which he gave, they were difficult to draw and were inconvenient to use. Why? Because it was difficult to remember all of them. So there was some other method used, and it was J.J. Berzelius of Sweden who proposed the method which we apply even today. He proposed that the first letter or the first letter and another letter of the name of an element should be used as its symbol. And the idea given by Berzelius led to the modern symbol of elements. Now, how exactly we relate the model symbols? There are certain rules. Number first rule says that the symbol of an element is the first alphabet, the first letter, or the first letter and another letter of their English names or Latin names. For example, for hydrogen, we take the first alphabet in capital, that is capital H. For oxygen, we use capital O. Carbon we know is represented by capital C. Boron by capital B. Nitrogen by capital N. Sulfur by capital S. And fluorine by capital F. But there are certain elements whose name begin with the same letter. So what exactly was decided? That we'll be using one letter, the first one, as the initial capital, and then another letter of the English or Latin name is to be written in small letter. For example, for helium, we take H capital and E small. Calcium is represented by C capital and A small. Similarly, cobalt, CO, lithium, Li, argon, Ar, barium, Ba, nickel, Ni. Now there were yet some metals or elements whose first and second alphabets both were same. In that case, it was decided that we will take the first letter, drop the second, and take the third alphabet. For example, zinc. Now in zinc, we have taken Z first alphabet, we have dropped N, and we have taken the third alphabet. Same is the case with chlorine. We have taken the first alphabet, dropped second, taken third. And in case of manganese, in manganese also, we have taken the first alphabet, dropped second, taken the third. So these were how the symbols were formed. Let us see some derived symbols from the English names. These are the symbols you already know, but let us brush up. For hydrogen, it is capital H. For helium, we have taken capital H and small e. For lithium, capital L, small I. For boron, it is simply capital B, first alphabet. Carbon, first alphabet, capital. Nitrogen, first alphabet, capital. Oxygen, first alphabet, capital. Fluorine, first alphabet, capital. For neon, because we have already used N for nitrogen, so now in order to differentiate, we will take capital N and small e. Magnesium, we have taken the first alphabet, dropped the second, and taken the third. Aluminium, first and second. Silicon, first and second alphabet. Phosphorus, first alphabet. Some more example: sulfur, first alphabet, capital S. Chlorine, first alphabet, drop second, take the third, Cl. Argon, first and second alphabet. Calcium, first and second alphabet. Manganese, first alphabet, dropping second, taking the third. Nickel, first and second alphabet. Zinc, taking the first alphabet, dropping second, taking the third, Zn. Bromine, Br, the first two alphabets. Krypton, Kr. Iodine, first alphabet. Barium, first and second alphabet. Cobalt, first and second alphabet. Uranium, first alphabet. Now whenever we are taking the first alphabet, we will be using it in capital. And whenever we are taking two alphabets, always the first alphabet has to be capital and the second alphabet has to be in small letter. Now, in these symbols, we know there are certain exceptions because there are certain symbols which are taken by the same rule but they are derived from their Latin names. For example, the symbol of sodium is Na. Why it is Na? Because it is derived from its Latin name which is natrium. So Na has been taken from here. Similarly, potassium is represented as capital K, which has nothing to do with P, O or T. Why so? Because it has been derived from its Latin name kalium. So capital K has been taken from there. Iron represented as Fe because its Latin name is ferrum. First two alphabets we have taken. Copper, we represent it with Cu because its Latin name is cuprum. So C and U, the first two alphabets of cuprum. Similarly, silver, we have taken Ag because its Latin name is argentum. We have taken A, dropped R because R we have used with A for argon, and we have taken third alphabet G. Gold, symbol is Au, Latin name is aurum, first two alphabets. Mercury, symbol is Hg because its Latin name is hydragenum, from where we have taken it. Now this is an exception because we have taken the first alphabet and we have taken the sixth alphabet. Lead, its symbol is Pb because of its Latin name plumbum, again capital P and then we have taken small b. Tin has been taken from stannum, capital S and small n, Sn. This is the symbol for tin, right? So these are the symbols of the elements which we must know. Now next we'll talk about the atomic mass. Now what is atomic mass of an element? First of all, this atomic mass is expressed in unit called atomic mass unit, which was written in short form as AMU in earlier times, but it is now just denoted by this particular symbol. This is atomic mass units. Now what exactly is atomic mass unit? Atomic mass unit is equal to 1/12 the mass of carbon 12 atom, right? So how we define one atomic mass unit? One atomic mass unit is defined as exactly 1/12 the mass of an atom of carbon 12. So the atomic mass of any element is actually the relative mass of its atom when it is compared with the mass of carbon 12 atom taken as 12 units, right? And the atomic mass of any element indicates the number of times one atom of the element, how much it is heavier or lighter as compared to 1/12 of a carbon 12 atom. If we talk about the actual mass, then one atomic mass unit is equal to 1.6605 into 10 to the power minus 24 grams. This is what one atomic mass unit is expressed in terms of grams. Let's now talk about what exactly atomicity is. What is atomicity? Atomicity means the number of atoms present in one molecule of an element. That is called its atomicity. We know that atoms exist in nature in various forms: atomic form, molecular form, compound form, that is their combined forms. Now all the noble gases like helium, neon, argon, krypton, etc., they are inert. They do not react because their outermost shells are complete. So they have one atom each in their molecule and they are simply represented as He, Ne, Ar and Kr. So we can say that the atomicity of noble gases is 1, and because it is 1, we call all the noble gases to be monoatomic, means they are one atom molecules. Certain metals like sodium or magnesium, aluminium, copper and iron, their atomicity is also 1. They are also considered monoatomic. The atomicity of carbon element is also 1. So carbon is also monoatomic. Certain elements exist in their molecular form having two atoms like hydrogen. The molecule of hydrogen is H2. Similarly, nitrogen is N2. Oxygen's molecule is O2. Chlorine is Cl2. Bromine is Br2. Iodine is I2. So we can see that all these elements have two atoms each in their molecules. So we say that the atomicity of these elements is 2 each. Hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, chlorine, bromine, iodine, their atomicity is 2. Now we see that ozone is O3 molecule which has got 3 atoms in its molecule. So what will be the atomicity of ozone? The atomicity of ozone will be 3. Similarly, when we talk about phosphorus, it exists as P4. It has got 4 atoms in its molecule, so its atomicity is 4. If atomicity is 2, we call them diatomic. If atomicity is 3, we call them triatomic. And since phosphorus has 4 atomicity, it is called tetraatomic. That means it exists in 4 atom molecules. Solid sulfur is S8. Its molecule contains 8 atoms. So the atomicity of sulfur is 8. It is called octaatomic, having 8 atom molecule. So atomicity is the number of atoms of one particular molecule of a element, and all the elements, they show different atomicity. Clear? Now when these elements and their atoms combine, how to represent them? That representation is called their chemical formulae. What is the chemical formula? Chemical formula represents the composition of a molecule of the substance in terms of the symbols of the elements which are present in the molecule. This chemical formula is also known as molecular formula. This molecular formula can be of an element as well as of a compound. We'll study in detail about the chemical formula later. Later means in this class only, don't worry. Next, talking about molecular mass. Now, what is molecular mass? The molecular mass of a substance is the relative mass of its molecule when we compare it with the mass of a carbon 12 atom taken as 12 units. Now, how to calculate the molecular mass? If we know the molecular formula of any substance, then we can simply calculate its molecular mass. How? Because it will be equal to the sum of the atomic masses of all the atoms present in one molecule of the substance. Try to understand it with the help of an example. For example, if we take water, we know the molecular formula of water or the chemical formula of water is H2O. From here we can relate that it contains 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So we will be calculating the mass of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, and will that they take the sum of them. Now we know that the mass of hydrogen atom is 1 unit. So if there are 2 hydrogen atoms, their mass will be 2 units. Mass of 1 oxygen atom is 16 units. So now 2 atoms of hydrogen, the total is 2 units, plus oxygen 1 atom mass is 16 units. Therefore, taking the sum, the molecular mass of water will be 18 units. Right? Let us see the molecular masses of certain common elements. For example, hydrogen, the atomic mass is 1 unit. And the molecular formula of hydrogen is H2. So what will be the molecular mass of hydrogen? Simply two atoms having 1 unit each, it will be 2 atomic mass units. When we talk about nitrogen, nitrogen's atomic mass is 14 units. It exists in the molecular formula N2 diatomic form. So the molecular mass will be 2 atoms of nitrogen having 14 units each becomes 28 units. Similarly, talking about oxygen, its atomic mass is 16 units. Molecular formula is diatomic O2. So its molecular mass will be 2 into 16 coming to be 32 units. Talking about chlorine, its atomic mass is 35.5 units. It also exists in diatomic form Cl2. So the molecular mass will be 2 into 35.5 units, that comes out to be 71 units. Sulfur, the atomic mass is 32 units, and we know that sulfur is octatomic. Its one molecule is basically made up of 8 atoms. It is molecular formula is S8. So its molecular mass will be 8 atoms of 32 units each becomes 256 units. Clear? Now, when we are just expressing the molecular masses, we are expressing them in atomic mass unit. But if we express the molecular mass of any particular molecule or a compound in grams, then it is called gram molecular mass of that substance. For example, the molecular mass of water we just calculated above, it was 18 units. But instead of expressing it in units, if we express it in grams, then it will become 18 grams, and that will be the gram molecular mass of water. Similarly, gram molecular mass of hydrogen will be 2 grams. Gram molecular mass of nitrogen will be 28 grams. Gram molecular mass of oxygen will be 32 grams. Gram molecular mass of chlorine will be 71 gram, and gram molecular mass of sulfur will be 256 gram. Fine. So the gram molecular mass is actually the molecular mass of any molecule expressed in grams. Now talking about ions. We know what is an ion. An ion is a positively or negatively charged atom or group of atoms. And when and how they are formed? They are formed by the loss or gain of electrons by an atom. Right? Now why exactly an atom electrons loses or gains electrons? In order to achieve the inert gas configuration, in order to complete their valence shell, in order to complete their octet, elements tend to lose or gain electrons, and then they become ions. Normally in an atom, we know that the number of protons, that is the positive charges, are always equal to the number of electrons, that is equal to the number of negative charges. So these equal and opposite charges cancel out each other, due to which a simple normal atom is always neutral as a whole, even though there are charged particles present in it. But when these electrons are lost or gained, so what happens is it will contain an unequal number of electrons and protons now, due to which these ions are charged. Either they are positively charged or they are negatively charged. Right? One more thing that you need to remember is radical. Now, what is a radical? It is a group of atoms of different elements that carries a charge and behaves as single unit. These are called radicals. For example, ammonium. We know that ammonium is NH4. It carries a positive charge. Similarly, sulfate. It also carries a negative charge and it behaves as a unit, but they both contain a group of atoms. In ammonium, we have got one nitrogen atom and four hydrogen atoms. And in sulfate, we have got one sulfur and four oxygen atoms. So many radicals are there, right? Now, talking about the ions, we call them that they are charged. A positively charged ion, we know that it is called cation. When exactly is a cation formed? Cation will be formed by the loss of one or more electrons by an atom. And when we talk about a cation, it simply means that since it has lost electrons, therefore a cation always contains less electrons as compared to a normal atom, right? Now, losing the electrons is a characteristic of all the metals. So, when we talk about the ions of all the metals, they are always cations. There are two exceptions. One is hydrogen ion and one is ammonium ion. These are also cations, even though they are non-metals. They are not metals, but still they form positive ions, that is cations. Next are the negatively charged ions, which are also known as anions. These anions are formed when an element is gaining one or more electrons, right? And because now they have gained electrons, therefore it is but obvious that an anion will always contain more electrons than a normal atom. Now, anions are formed by the gaining of electrons, and we know that it is the non-metals which gain the electrons. Therefore, the ions of all the non-metallic elements, they are anions, with an exception of course, hydrogen ion and ammonium ion that we have just seen above, right? So let us try to relate a few ions. There are simple ions and there are compound ions which are called polyatomic ions. What are these? The ions which are formed from single atoms. They are called simple ions. For example, sodium ion Na plus, magnesium ion Mg2 plus, aluminium ion Al3 plus, oxide ion O2 minus, chloride ion Cl minus. They are all simple ions regardless of whether they are cations or anions. These simple ions are also known as monoatomic ions. But there are certain ions which are formed from groups of joined atoms. Such ions are called compound ions or polyatomic ions because they contain more than one atom. For example, ammonium ion NH4 plus, it contains nitrogen as well as hydrogen. Similarly, carbonate ion CO32 minus containing carbon and oxygen. Sulfate ions containing two elements sulfur and oxygen. Nitrate ions containing two elements nitrogen and oxygen. Hydroxide ion containing two elements oxygen and hydrogen. These are all compound ions, which are also called as polyatomic ions. Poly means many, atomic means atoms. So it contains many atoms. So these are the two types of ions, simple ions and the compound ions or the polyatomic ions. Now let us come to chemical formulae. We have just studied above that the chemical formula of a compound represents the composition of a molecule of the compound in terms of the symbols of the elements which are present in it. What does it mean? It means that the formula of a compound tells us the kind of atoms as well as the number of atoms of various elements which are present in one molecule of the compound. For example, if we talk about the compound glucose, we know that its chemical formula is C6H12O6. Now, just by looking at the formula, we can conclude two things. Number one, what exactly is glucose made up of? It is made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen because we can see the symbols. Second thing is we can just see the subscripts and this will tell us how many atoms of each element are present. For example, there are 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen and 6 atoms of oxygen, which together constitute to form one molecule of glucose. So the chemical formulae, they become very important because just by looking at them, we can relate the number of and the kind of atoms which are present in that particular compound or a molecule. Now for making these chemical formulae, we need to relate and remember the valency of the ions. Now this is something which you all must learn by heart. You already know it, you already have done, but please make sure that you revise them again and again. Because chemistry means reactions. Reactions include compounds, molecules, formulas, and if you have the basic knowledge of these valencies, you will never ever face any problem. Talking about the valency of ions, first of all we're talking about cations. In cations, monovalent cations having one valency, that means they have got one positive charge. Which all cations have one valency? Let us see. Hydrogen ion, H plus, lithium ion, Li plus. 1 plus means it has got one valency. Similarly, sodium ion, potassium ion, ammonium ion, and then we have got silver ion, copper 1 ion, Cu plus, mercury 1 ion, which is also called mercurous ion. This copper is also called cuprous ion, right? These are all examples of monovalent ions. Next are divalent cations having valency of 2 plus, magnesium, calcium, zinc, iron. Now iron 2 is also known as ferrous. Then barium 2 plus, copper 2 plus, which is also known as cupric, it should come here, and mercury 2 or mercuric Hg2 plus, it should come here. So this is Hg2 plus, and copper 2 is also known as cupric. So there are two different valencies of copper. Either it is copper 1, which is also known as cuprous, and copper 2, which is also known as cupric. Similarly, mercury 1 also known as mercurous, and mercury 2 also known as mercuric. These are the divalent cations. Next are the trivalent cations having valency 3 plus. These are aluminium Al3 plus and iron 3 ion Fe3 plus, which is also called ferric. So iron also exhibits two valencies. One is 2 plus ferrous and another is 3 plus ferric. These are all the cations. Now talking about the anions, monovalent anions means the elements having valency of 1 minus. They will gain one electron. For example, hydride H minus, fluoride F minus, chloride Cl minus, bromide Br minus, iodide I minus, bicarbonate ions HCO3 minus, nitrite NO2 minus, nitrate NO3 minus, hydroxide is OH minus, and hydrogen carbonate or bicarbonate is one of the same thing. These are the monovalent anions. Taking a few examples of divalent anions, that means the anions, negative ions having valency 2. For example, oxide ions O2 minus, sulfide ions S2 minus, sulfite ions SO32 minus, sulfate ions SO42 minus, and carbonate ions CO32 minus. They have two negative valency. Trivalent anions are the anions having 3 minus valency. Example, nitride, it is N3 minus, phosphide P3 minus, and phosphate PO4 3 minus. You need to learn, remember these valencies. And now, after learning these valencies, we know that we can simply make the formulas ourselves. How? Taking an example, rather a few examples let us take. If we want to make the formula of any compound, for example, if we want to make the formula of sodium oxide, so first of all what we will do is we will write down the symbol of sodium, which is Na, then the symbol of oxide, which is O. Then below them we will write their valencies. The cations are always written first, anions are always written later. Now writing their valencies, sodium has valency of 1, oxygen has valency of 2. Now what we do is we cross multiply, showing the arrow like this. We are cross multiplying, means we will write the valency of sodium below oxygen and of oxygen below sodium. So what it will become? It will become Na2O1. Now there is no need to write 1 because we can already see one O. So the formula of sodium oxide becomes Na2O. Similarly, if we want to make the formula of, let us say, aluminium oxide. Now for writing the formula of aluminium oxide, first of all we'll write the symbol of aluminium, that is Al. Formula for oxide symbol is O. Valency of aluminium is 3. Valency of oxygen is 2. We will write below them and then we will simply cross multiply. This will become Al2O3. This is the formula for aluminium oxide. So you see that for writing the formulas, obviously we need to know the valencies first. Now the third variety comes when we have polyatomic. For example, if I want to form the formula of zinc hydroxide, zinc symbol is Zn, hydroxide symbol is OH. Valency of zinc is 2, valency of hydroxide is 1. So now we will cross multiply, showing the arrows is important, and what will happen is zinc here has 1 and hydroxide has 2. But the problem is if I will write 2 like this, then it will appear as if this is 2 hydrogen atoms. But this 2 is actually going under as a whole OH. So in such cases, we put a bracket from our side. There is no need to write 1. So the formula becomes ZnOH and bracket 2. So we read it ZnOH whole twice. Right? Similarly, if I want to write the formula of ammonium sulfate, now the symbol for ammonium is NH4, sulfate is SO4. Valency of ammonium is 1, sulfate is 2, cross multiplying, 2 going here, 1 going here. Now because this 2 is going as a whole for ammonium, so I will write NH4, I will place a bracket from my side and then I will write SO4 and after bracket 1. But since I don't need to write 1, so there will be no need to differentiate and no need for the bracket. So simple formula is NH4 whole twice SO4. This is the formula for ammonium sulfate. This is the second type that you need to remember while making the formulas. Let us see one more concept. Now what exactly is that concept? Third concept is, for example, if I want to write the formula of magnesium oxide, the symbol for magnesium I'll write Mg, symbol for oxygen I'll write O. The valency of magnesium is 2 and oxygen is also 2. Now since they are both 2, we need to bring them to their lowest form. They have a common denominator of 2, so I'll divide these 2 with 2 and I will get 2 1 the 2 and 2 1 the 2. I'll be bringing them in their lowest form. Now it become 1 1, so now I will cross multiply and it will become Mg1 O1 Obviously, I am not going to write 1. So the formula for magnesium oxide becomes MgO. Right? Let us take one more example. If I need to form the formula of carbon dioxide, carbon is C, oxide is O, valency of carbon is 4, oxygen is 2. Now we can see that they can be further brought down in their lowest form by dividing it with 2. So I'll divide both these with 2, 2 to the 4 and 2 on the 2. So now it is in the lowest form. So I'll cross multiply, and carbon 1, O2, 1 I'm not writing. So the formula for carbon dioxide becomes CO2. So this is how formulas are made. Right? You need to know how to make the formulas, and you will be able to do so only and only when you remember the valencies. Right? Now, next comes the mole concept. First of all, we need to relate the concept of gram atomic mass and gram molecular mass. Let us try to relate what these are. Gram atomic mass. What is atomic mass? Atomic mass is the mass of an atom of an element. And when that mass is expressed in grams rather than atomic mass units, it becomes a gram atomic mass. So, the amount of a substance whose mass in grams is numerically equal to its atomic mass is called the gram atomic mass of that substance. Directly, what we can say is the gram atomic mass is actually the atomic mass of the substance which is expressed in grams. Simple. Right? Now, very importantly, we have studied all in detail about mole concept. We need to relate and remember that the gram atomic mass of a substance represents the mass of 1 mole of atoms. And how many atoms are there in 1 mole? It is 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 atoms of that substance. This 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 atoms, we also call them Avogadro number. Right? Next is the molar mass of a substance is the mass of 1 mole of that substance. And the unit of molar mass is grams per mole, also written as G/mol. Now the molar mass of an element is the mass of 1 mole of its atoms. That means the molar mass of an element will be equal to the 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 atoms. That is Avogadro number of the element in it. So these are a few things we need to remember regarding the gram atomic mass. Exactly same, we need to relate the gram molecular mass. What is gram molecular mass? The amount of a substance whose mass in grams is numerically equal to its molecular mass. That is called gram molecular mass of that substance. If saying it indirectly, we can also write that the molecular mass of a substance which is expressed in grams is called its gram molecular mass. Right? Again, the gram molecular mass, just like the gram atomic mass of a substance, represent the mass of 1 mole of the molecules. That is 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 molecules of that substance. So, the number of molecules which are present in 1 gram molecular mass of any substance is the Avogadro number, that is 1 mole, that is 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 molecules. So this is gram atomic mass and gram molecular mass. Now what exactly is mole concept? We already know that a group of 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 particles. Now when we call particles, it may be atoms, it may be molecules, or it may be the ions of that substance, right? Simply 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 is equivalent to 1 mole of that substance. If it is 1 mole of atoms that we are talking about, it simply means 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 atoms. If we are talking about 1 mole of molecules, it will be 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 molecules. Just simply we can relate with this particular simplest thing, that we also have a unit called dozen. Now this dozen means 12. Now 12 what? It depends on 1 dozen of what. If I am talking about 1 dozen of apples, it will mean 12 apples. If I am talking about 1 dozen bananas, it is 12 bananas. If I am talking about 1 dozen pens, it means 12 pens. 1 dozen registers, 12 registers. Similarly, 1 mole is just like 1 dozen, and 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 is just like 12. If we are saying that 1 mole is equal to 6.022 into 10 to the power 23, now 1 mole of what? 1 mole of atoms, it will be these many atoms. 1 mole of molecules, it will be these many molecules. 1 mole of ions, it will be 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 ions. And as I already told you, that this number of 6.022 into 10 to the power 23, which represents a mole, is known as Avogadro number. Got it? A few important things that we need to relate while doing the questions based on mole concept. 1 mole of atom of an element has a mass equal to the gram atomic mass of the element. That means 1 mole of atoms is equal to gram atomic mass of the element. Similarly, 1 mole of molecules of the substance has a mass equal to the gram molecular mass of the substance. And these are the few things that we need to remember while attempting the questions based on mole concept. Number one, if we want to calculate the number of moles of an atom, we can simply calculate it with the formula amount of substance expressed in grams divided by the gram atomic mass of that element. Similarly, number of moles of atoms is equal to amount of substance in grams divided by the gram molecular mass. If we want to calculate the mass of a molecule, the formula is gram molecular mass divided by the Avogadro number, that is 6.022 into 10 to the power 23. Fine. Another important thing, this you have got so many times in exams. Please make sure you learn it. For a gas at STP, standard temperature and pressure, which is 0 degrees Celsius temperature and 760 millimeter of mercury pressure, then the volume is 22.4 liters for 1 mole gas. You need to remember it. So these are the various things that we need to keep in mind while we'll be solving any problem, any question, calculation required for that to solve the questions related to moles of atoms. And this is all about our atoms and molecules. This is quite a small chapter, and in just this one class we have just revised each and everything. And I'm not taking the questions in today's class because I want you people to first of all revise, first of all just be confident and strengthen your basics. Try to practice the questions based on mole concept, right? And all the other things. Then try to make up the chemical formula, revise all the valencies once again, because unless until you know the valencies, you will not be able to make the formulas. So revise the valencies as many times as possible and then try to make some random chemical formula of few compounds, right? And after that, in the next class, we'll be discussing the questions of atoms and molecules. Clear? So we'll meet in the next class with the questions. Till then, try to work hard, try to relate the things, and have a great day.